Everyone, and thank you for joining us on Western Mass News after the game. I'm Glenn Kittle. We begin in Northampton, where members of the community are hosting a 24-hour teach-in protesting the actions taken against the Palestinian people in Rafah amidst Israel's war against Hamas. Western Mass News reporter Reagan Stoddard joins us in studio with more information after attending today's event. Reagan?
Glenn, the 24-hour sit-in is in honor of the Jewish holiday Shabbat, which is typically marked through all-night study sessions of sacred texts. Activists and community members hosted Up All Night for Palestine. Event organizers say this protest is dedicated to teaching and learning about what they're calling a genocide happening in Palestine.
This is a 24-hour teach-in because the people in Palestine, especially in Gaza, but also in the West Bank and in Jerusalem, are under assault at the moment.
Members of the Jewish, Muslim, and allied communities were in attendance in solidarity at today's demonstration.
People are coming out from a lot of different experiences and identities to say that the horrors that are underway in Gaza are unacceptable and that we as humans need to take a stand together.
The Jewish community expressed their frustration of the Israel government. As their war against Hamas continues, thousands of civilian casualties have been caught in the crossfire.
I and we as a community are horrified that the actions of the Israeli military are being carried out in our name as Jews.
The organizers also call for an immediate arms embargo, saying the U.S. is backing carnage in Rafah.
Children are being killed in the thousands, and it's funded by U.S. taxpayers.
Many in the crowd making their criticism of the Israeli government known.
A permanent ceasefire, even if it happened tomorrow, would not be enough if we continue to fund and ship weapons to the Israeli military, because we know that those weapons will be used.
The teach-in included topics like the history of Jewish opposition to Zionism and Palestinian and Jewish rituals. The event began Saturday at 9 a.m. and will end on Sunday at 9 a.m. Members of the community are encouraged to join in on the event at any time. Reporting in studio, Reagan Stoddard, Western Mass News.
Thank you for that live report, Reagan.